everyone, welcome back to my channel. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms episode 1 just dropped, so let's talk about it. But really quick, if you've never seen my face before and would like to see my face again, hello, my name is Estella Graves, I'm a fantasy content creator, and I'm going to be covering all things A Song of Ice and Fire, including A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, House of the Dragon, etc. So if you'd like that type of content, feel free to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification, and make sure to check me out on the other apps as well, because I post different content over there. First, rate the fit. Let me know what you think of it. This is my best kind of approximation at a Lyanna Stark closet cosplay. I kind of just threw something together, but I thought it would be really fun to be dressed as the, original girl at attorney that caused a lot of scandal, considering this entire story for season 1 is going to take place at the tourney of Ashford. So I actually got to go to the A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms premiere here in Los Angeles, so I got to see episodes 1 and 2. I'm gonna try to keep this video to episode 1. So with that, I won't be making predictions about episode 2 because that feels a bit disingenuous, but maybe next week I'll make some predictions. The event itself was really fun. I went dressed as Shay and I got this cool foam sword they were giving out to everyone, so that's very fun. Unfortunately, George R. R. Martin could not be there. They didn't give a reason why. So for everyone that was kind of interested in that Knights challenge that was going around where George R. R. Martin was going to knight someone, actually it ended up just being the host, Drew Afualo, who knighted everyone. Other than that, the event was really fun. There was a lot of cool photo opportunities and fun snacks. And overall, the reception seemed really good. People seemed pretty excited and pretty pleased with the episodes. So with that, let's get into my short little review. I'm sure you've seen a lot of reviews of this episode, so I won't go too in depth. Personally, I loved it. I thought it was very well done. The only thing that I didn't really need was the poop joke at the beginning. However, I know some people find that humor very funny. From what I've seen, it seems kind of like a mixed bag as to whether or not people liked it or didn't like that joke. To me, it wasn't world-breaking. It didn't make me want to turn off the TV. But overall, the humor throughout the rest of the episode was a bit more in line with my sense of humor. I will say, too, I've seen some reviews of people who have seen the full season saying that there's kind of gross-out humor in almost every episode, and like I said, I've seen episodes 1 and 2, and I can confirm that's at least the case for the first 2 episodes. So again, if those kind of jokes and that kind of humor really upsets you, this show might not be for you. I mean, I personally think still stick it out because there are a lot of really good and amazing things about this show that ultimately makes it worth it for me. Like I said, a couple jokes that don't quite land right isn't gonna ruin it for me, but I digress. Overall though, I applaud these first episodes for being absolutely faithful to the source material. I was surprised at how many lines were either directly ripped from the books or just changed ever so slightly to make them work a little bit better in context. For example, the exchange between Dunk and the innkeeper is basically word for word what it is in the book, and I recognize technically these are novellas, but I will likely slip up and say book, novella, whatever. So like I said, certain lines of dialogue that were just straight up pulled from the book, and then moments that weren't, were kind of just tweaked in a way that made them work a little bit better. So for example, when Dunk sees the shooting star in the novella, he kind of thinks this to himself, whereas in the show they have it be a dialogue between him and Egg. And I thought this was actually very well done because a lot of these moments are in Dunk's head. So as they're writing the showrunners do need to find a way to, make these moments more obvious to the viewers. They can't have this constant internal monologue, so it makes sense to verbalize some of these things more or give some of these bits to other characters to say. Overall though, I agree with George R. R. Martin sentiment that this is as faithful as an adaptation can be. However, there were some key differences, so let's talk about it. So the brothel workers, plumber, and the Baratheon dance scene. So the brothel workers are like completely new to this. They are not in the book at all, but honestly, I don't mind that. I think all of the changes that they did felt in world and worked. I thought they were incredibly funny, and I really liked Red overall. I thought her outfit was fabulous. I might cosplay her in the future. And I liked that they didn't just show them doing their brothel work. I think it could have been very easy to just show a lot of gratuitous nudity as opposed to the kind of few moments of nudity we got, which felt a little bit more humorous. And I enjoy that they showed them actually working and doing other things. We see Red, it looks like she was maybe kind of darning or hemming another knight's trousers, and yeah, it makes sense that these men would be going out and fighting in the yard and training and that their clothes would rip and someone would have to sew them. And again, it makes sense that it would be a brothel worker who's just looking to make some extra coin. Overall, it just adds a level of realism to the world, and we get that as well with the innkeep saying that line about the price of eggs, and from some, other kind of glimpses into the future episodes, we see Dunk grocery shopping and buying eggs. So I think overall these little elements really do add to the world building and make it feel grounded and realistic. It's like, yeah, of course these characters are going to go to the bathroom and buy groceries and need their clothes sewn, etc. And also like need to take baths, need to wash their clothes. I thought they did a really good job handling the slowed down pace that really gave us an inside glimpse into some of the small folks' lives. And so Plumber, the master of the games, I thought this edition was also really fun, really fabulous. I thought he was hilarious, and I thought they did a really good job, imbuing life into a somewhat minor character and making him stand out. His little quip about the Ashford chair felt very horrific and very much like, oh my gosh, is this gonna be Thrones? And then it's, no, just kidding, this isn't the Riverlands. And so again, it helps set the tone of this world of like, yes, there are terrible things that happen in this world and could happen in this world, but hopefully it's not that kind of a tale, you know? And now the Baratheon scene, let's talk about it. And with that, we're gonna be getting into a little segment that I might be doing every week if I cover every one of these episodes, might not be, called Who's That Character? Because let me tell you, there are a lot of new characters, and I know a lot of people were confused. So, who's that character? Lyonel Baratheon. So this character is the ancestor of Renly, Robert, and Stannis, as well as the descendant of the Baratheons that you see in House of the Dragon. And with that, I thought they did a really good job at kind of cluing us in and seeding in these tiny little hints of Robert, Renly, and Stannis. We see the Renly in the fact that Lyonel seems to be very good with people, he's very good at partying, and he's very well dressed. We see the Robert in him in the kind of little hints and whispers we get about him being a great warrior, and in the fact that when he's on the dance floor with Duncan kind of possibly testing out his footwork, seeing how quick his reflexes are, we see him almost have this little bit of a stormy disposition where you're like, oh, is he gonna get wrathful and angry? Or is he going to be the drunk, happy kind of party guy that we sometimes saw Robert be? And with that, I've seen a lot of people say, oh yeah, you can totally tell that he is Renly and Robert's ancestor, but not so much Stannis. And I will say, I think in this one scene, we get a little hint of Stannis. The line where he says, and if you don't do this, I will have you burned as a heretic. It's very much that Stannis, like, you must follow the rules or swift justice will ensue. And overall, I thought it was just a very fun little nod. I also wanted to point out that when Lyonel is kind of, philosophically navel-gazing and telling everyone, I have this idea and this thought, that he's trying to get everyone to kind of say that stags invented jousting, but no one really gets it, and so he's just like, screw it, I'll give 100 gold to the man who sticks me best, whatever. It really made me laugh, and I just thought it was well handled. So yes, that is a character to watch. I think, we've seen that he is this, like, jovial party guy, but then we do get that little mention of, like, oh, you wouldn't want to see a farmer face down Lyonel Baratheon in the lists, it would be a different type of entertainment, kind of hinting at the fact that even though he is a drunk party guy, he also is a little bit formidable and maybe one to watch in the joust. So keep an eye out for that. Next, the Fossaways. Who are these apple guys? So we have Raymond Fossaway and we have Stefan Fossaway. And with Raymond Fossaway, I've seen people say, Podrick? No, not Podrick. But he kind of has a Podrick vibe, so I can see why you would think that. I think they're definitely playing that up. And the Fossaways are a house from the Reach. They're a house sworn to House Tyrell. Originally they were sworn to House Gardner, and they claim descent from Garth the Greenhand. The original Fossaway was Foss the Archer, and his claim to fame was that he could shoot an apple off of any maiden's head. Charming, right? And so with that, we have, Stefan and Raymond. Obviously, Stefan feels a bit imposing, and, we get some apple puns, but really kind of an indication into who he is, which is rotten to the core. It's also notable, too, that the Fossaways hail from Cider Hall, and their words are a taste of glory. So yeah, apple puns are apropos for this family. So get ready for some more in the future. And if you're wondering where the Fossaways are during the main series or during House of the Dragon, the Fossaways end up backing Team Green, even though they're kind of minor and likely won't get shown or mentioned in House of the Dragon. I mean, Maybe, but I highly doubt it. And then in Game of Thrones, they are again backing the Tyrells. So they back Renly and then eventually back the Lannisters. But again, they are kind of a minor house. They're not very major, so it makes sense for a lot of people to not know about them. This is likely people's first introductions to this house. And with that, we're going to see some very interesting history take place for this house across this season. I don't want to get too much into it or spoil things, but it is just very interesting and fun to see. So again, keep an eye out for that. And lastly, let's talk about Manfred Dondarrion. But really quick, let's talk about Red. I mentioned her previously. Red is the brothel worker that is working for Manfred. And I've seen some people say, Roz? No, not Roz, but I can see how you would think that. So she is, again, a character that is show only, very similar to Roz, and I imagine she will be fulfilling a similar role in showing us the lives of the small folk, but specifically a aspect of the small folk that Dunk is not really engaged in or can't show us the life of. So I'm excited to see her almost as a little bit of a foil in a way to Dunk's experience as a hedge knight. I've heard that she gets a little bit of her own arc throughout this season, so I'm excited for that. And now back to Manfred. So Manfred Dondarrion. Yes, like Beric Dondarrion, Manfred is the ancestor of Beric. And I feel like we get a little bit of a hint of that, or maybe it's just kind of a cheeky reference in the fact that, you know, we have that one brothel worker who is pretending to be dead, and then it's kind of ironic that then years down the line we have Beric, who quite literally is undead. We had kind of touched base on that in a live that I had done, and I just think that is such a funny insight that I had to include it here. Other than that, I feel like we see a really good kind of glimpse and perspective with Manfred, and that is that all of these lords are not always honorable. They're not always nice guys. Sometimes they're freaks. Not that there's anything wrong with being a freak, as long as everything is cool and consensual, but it seems like this guy is into some strange things. Wanting to turn the whole world red, possibly having a kiss of life fetish type thing going on with this girl. Needless to say, I think it would be kind of funny as a running gag if every time we see these brothel workers and Manfred, if they're preparing for some, you know, different fetish or kink. Like maybe Dunk sees them next time and one of them is just tying the other one up and it's like, you know, just daily business. They're just like, oh yeah, this is just what we do. Like very casual about it. I think that could be very goofy. But either way, I'm curious to see where the arc with Manfred goes. I mean, obviously we know what we know from the novella, but again, they're kind of expanding all of these characters, so I think there's some opportunities to do some interesting stuff with him. And like I said, he is kind of there to show that not all of these lords are great, not all of them are honorable. Obviously, Dunk tells him, you know, how could you forget Sir Arlen? He took a wound in your service. And this guy kind of just shrugs him off and is like, yeah, a lot of people took a wound for me. Some people reaped worse. I don't remember you, goodbye. It shows that, you know, in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, we have these lords being kind of rude to each other, and then it shows, like, what do they then think of a nobody on the ground? A nobody, a hedge knight that has no name that they don't care about. They treat them even worse. No surprises there. I also really liked that with Lyonel, it felt very kind of debauched. I've seen people talk about it feeling almost like a Bacchanalia, very Dionysus inspired of like, oh yes, Dunk is now, you know, down the rabbit hole in Wonderland. It's, you know, like, look what you've gotten yourself into. You're playing with the big boys now, and now you're in the big leagues, which I feel like is a little hint as to where the rest of this season is going. So next, some common questions to address. I've been seeing a lot of questions, and I'm not going to answer all of them because I think certain questions will be answered in time as we keep watching the show. Like, for example, who is Egg? Why is he bald? Who is that guy at the tavern? Etc. But there are a couple little world building questions that I feel like could be addressed that I don't think they're going to touch on. So the number one thing I've been seeing is, why does Dunk have 3 horses? Why doesn't he sell some of those horses? So let's talk about it. Dunk has 3 horses because he has Chestnut, he has Sweetfoot, the white palfrey, and then he has Thunder, the kind of dark kind of war horse. So Chestnut, the kind of brown, swayback older horse, is Dunk's horse. Sweetfoot, the white palfrey, was Sir Arlen's horse, and Thunder is specifically said to be ridden only in war and for tourneys, for jousts. Now, why would you have 3 horses? Well, it could be useful sometimes to have an extra horse to carry some extra things, or like I said, you have a horse specifically bred and used for war and for more violent things versus you have the other horses that are a little calmer and better for things like everyday riding. And now I've seen people say, why doesn't Dunk sell his horses? Excuse me? Would you sell a beloved family pet? No. So obviously the main answer is, you know, answered quite literally in the show. Dunk says if he sells the horses, it's a pretty sure route to beggary and robbery. And Lionel even says, you know, a knight without a horse is no true knight, so that's why he doesn't sell the horses. But more importantly, he doesn't sell them because they are basically family for him. He loves these horses. He talks to them quite a bit throughout the episode, and as we will see, he talks to them all throughout this first novella and, you know, into the others as well. But it's just really important to know that he cares about these horses. Incredibly so. So much that if he ever did have to sell one, it would probably be very heartbreaking for him. It would be a very difficult thing to do that he would not want to do. So with that in mind, he does not want to sell them. That's why he doesn't sell them. Now, the second question I've been seeing a lot is, where the heck is Ashford? Where is this? It's in the Reach. So it's kind of close-ish to Highgarden, but not really. I mean, it's in the Reach, it's a little bit further up the river, and Ashford Meadow is across the river, and that's kind of where the tourney is. Ashford is a kind of smaller market town. Ashford as a house, again, is not a big house. They're not super flashy, which is likely why a lot of people probably have not heard of them until this story. So that is where Ashford is. We are in the Reach. And a last question that I've seen is kind of asking how jousting works. I was watching this show with a friend who had not really seen these series. She had seen House of the Dragon, and so when Lyonel said, you know, oh, 100 gold to the man who sticks me best, she kind of leaned over and said, does he want to die? Because I think for her, she had gotten it in her mind that jousting was to the death, thanks to things like House of the Dragon. So no, jousting successfully should not be to the death. It should be for fun. It should be whoever yields first. It should just be people breaking their lances. And all of these knights and these men, these lords, they come together to joust and to do melees and tourneys for fun. It's almost like a big sporting event. And when people do die, it's supposed to be horrific. In a Game of Thrones, when the Mountain ends up killing Sir Hugh, it's supposed to be horrific because that is not supposed to happen. That's not how it's supposed to go down. And so when House of the Dragon paints it like, oh no, they're all just killing each other, it kind of puts it in your mind of like, why would anyone want to joust anyways? I think it, you know, just wasn't quite handled as well as it should be. I think it was a little more violent just to kind of make it sensational, because ideally people, you know, do get injured in jousts and stuff, but they shouldn't be dying, because if everyone was dying every time they jousted, no one would want to do it. So yes, there's that. A joust should ideally be kind of a fun sporting event with hopefully no one dying. If they do, it's accidental and it's considered kind of tragic. And so with that, that is kind of my full coverage of this first episode of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. You'll have to let me know what you think about the episode and if you have any other questions. And lastly, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. It means a lot to me. If you have any other video suggestions in the future, let me know. I think later this week I will be posting a little breakdown on who all of the new Targaryens are, because trust me, there's a lot, and the timelines and the family trees can be kind of confusing, so hopefully that helps. But if you have any other ideas, let me know. Okay, bye. Stay hedge knighty. Yeah, okay, yeah, we're done.